Hello, I'm Ana Cabrera reporting from New York, and we begin with breaking news. The Vatican confirming the death of Pope Francis this morning at the age of 88. The Cardinal releasing this statement to the world. The Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father, adding he taught us to live the values of the gospel with faithfulness, courage, and universal love, especially in favor of the poorest and the marginalized. The Pope, last seen in public just yesterday, briefly appearing on Easter Sunday to bless tens of thousands of worshipers gathered in St. Peter's Square, and offering a very short message in Italian to the crowd with a voice noticeably diminished following weeks of hospitalization for double pneumonia. NBC News International correspondent Claudio Lavanga is in Vatican City for us this morning, where mourners are gathering. Claudio?
Well, the hundreds of pilgrims who are here in St. Peter's Square on Easter Monday are still in shock following the news of the Pope's passing this morning. Now, only 24 hours ago, many of them were here to celebrate Easter Mass when the Pope made a sudden and surprise appearance on that balcony in the middle of St. Peter's Basilica. He was in a wheelchair. He did look weak, as he's done for the past few months since he developed that bilateral pneumonia, but certainly it looked like he was kind of recovering, or at least there were signs that he was recovering. He wasn't wearing those oxygen tubes in his nose anymore. He spoke, even if it was just a few words. He said, wished a happy Easter to everyone. He blessed the crowds. He even got on that Pope mobile to tour the square and the surrounding areas, greeting the excited flock, the crowd that wasn't expecting to see him. He was blessing children. So there were all these signs that people took as he was improving. And then less than 24 hours later, the shocking news that the Pope has died. Now, the Vatican said that later in the day, the Cardinal Camerlengo of the Catholic Church, he's an American, is Kevin Farrell, who is an administrator, some sort of administrator during this period when there is no Pope, between one Pope and the other. He will be presiding over a rite of certification of the death of Pope Francis and the deposition of the body in the coffin. Even that was a procedure that was simplified by Pope Francis. In the past, popes were being placed into 3 separate caskets, then they were being placed into the St. Peter's Basilica on an elevated platform. Pope Francis has simplified that. He said, none of that, let's make it more simple, let's make it more humble, which is very much in line with his pontificate. Let's just stick to one coffin, zinc-lined, wooden, simple coffin. So he's going to be placed in that, and then as early as Wednesday, the Vatican spokesperson said he is going to lie in state inside St. Peter's Basilica to allow pilgrims to pay the last respects. And we do expect, of course, a long line of pilgrims for the next 24 to 48 hours following that, because this was a pope that was very much loved here in Rome, in Italy, and of course around the world. Then in 15 to 20 days from now, the conclave. The cardinals will once again be called to select the next pontiffs.
Claudio Lavanga again at the Vatican for us. Thank you. Let's bring in Father Thomas Reese now, the National Catholic Reporter, senior analyst, and former ambassador to the Holy See, Joe Donnelly. Thank you both so much for being here with us. Father Reese, Pope Francis was such a remarkable man, first in so many ways, the first pope from Latin America, the first pope to take the name of Francis after St. Francis of Assisi, who pledged to live in poverty and to help the disenfranchised. How is that legacy being remembered today?
I think it's being remembered with great affection. I mean, this Pope died the way he lived, as a pastor. I think it's just wonderful that he was able to complete Holy Week, to celebrate Easter, the resurrection of the Lord with the people of Rome, coming out and being there with them, blessing them. This is the way a pastor wants to go after giving his all to his flock. I think he will be remembered with love and affection as being someone who talked to us about the compassion and love of God and called us to love one another.
As Claudio mentioned, he was pretty popular. He was referred to as the People's Pope often. Ambassador Donnelly, you met and worked with Pope Francis. You called it the honor of a lifetime. Tell us about those experiences and the man, the pastor, the Pope that he was.
As Father was saying, the Pope was fully engaged on behalf of those who are marginalized, those who struggled every single day. And that was his focus. And that's what he talked about with me representing the United States is how do we extend the benefits of a strong economy? How do we extend the benefits of a nation that's doing well to everybody around the world? And so we worked on that together. He also was very, very strong on protecting Ukraine, on trying to get a solution to the situation in Gaza. That weighed heavy on his heart every single day. But as Father was saying, he worked right till the end. That's what's so amazing is even when he was knocking on death's door, he was riding around in the Pope Mobile to the crowds yesterday, waving, because he served right till the very last moment.
Father Reese, one of the defining issues Pope Francis spoke about so often was immigration. He was the product of immigration himself, his family having fled fascism in Italy to settle in Argentina. He traveled to the Greek island of Lesbos to highlight the plight of refugees. He traveled to the U.S.-Mexico border in 2015 to call for compassion for asylum seekers. How unique was it for a pope to use his platform in this way?
Well, I think all popes have been concerned about refugees. Certainly, the Church played a major role in resettling refugees after the First and Second World Wars. But this pope made it a singular primary principal issue of his papacy. His very first trip outside of Rome was to the boot of Italy, where dead refugees were floating up on the shore because they tried to get from Africa to Europe, fleeing oppression, fleeing violence, fleeing religious persecution. His heart was with the migrants and refugees because they had such great needs and were really being ignored by Europe and the United States. And so he was someone who wanted to build bridges, not walls, to keep out migrants and refugees.
Yeah, in 2014, he said migrants and refugees are not pawns on the chessboard of humanity. He said immigrants who are helped to integrate are a blessing, a source of enrichment, and a new gift that encourages a society to grow. He was quite outspoken about this and other issues. Ambassador, it was a Pope Francis, who didn't shy away from going there. And he met with Vice President J.D. Vance just yesterday and then released a message after saying this, quote, "I appeal to all those in positions of political responsibility in our world not to yield to the logic of fear." What did you make of the Pope's willingness to interject himself into some controversial and some very political discussions worldwide?
Well, what I think you could take away from that was he said, if I am in this position, I'm going to do everything possible to try to help the poor, try to help the marginalized, try to help those who are struggling. And he spoke to power. He was power as well. And so he never was afraid to say exactly what was on his mind and did that throughout the entire world. In regards to the United States, he also knew that we are a nation of immigrants, that's the history of our country. You know, I talked to him about the fact that I'm the grandson of immigrants. And that was something that was very close to his heart, is how do we make sure, doing it in a way that works as well for the United States, for other countries, how do we make sure that everybody can have a decent life, that he cared as much about the one struggling the most as the one who was succeeding the best?
Father Reese, Pope Francis angered some traditionalists in how he spoke of other issues, whether it was LGBTQ rights or gender roles in the church. He was also very passionate about climate change, the focus of his address to the U.S. Congress back in 2015 when he became the first pope to address a joint session of Congress. I just wonder, how successful was he in moving the needle? Is the church in a different place now because of his influence, do you think?
I think so. I mean, he saw his role as Pope to be a prophet for peace and justice in the world and for the protection of the earth. And he did that. He didn't worry about public opinion polls. He didn't worry about donors. He spoke about justice. He spoke about peace. He longed for peace in Gaza and in Ukraine and in many parts of Africa, like the Sudan, where people are suffering. He never, we can only focus on a couple of things in the news, and yet he was focusing on all these issues all around the world that he had great concern about. And I think that prophetic voice is part of the DNA of the Catholic Church today, that we are going to be on the side of the poor, we're going to be on the side of the marginalized, and we're going to be on the side of peace. When religion is no longer going to be a divisive something, of having religious wars. No, he wanted to have peace. And so he reached out to other religious groups. For example, when he went to Iraq and met with the chief Sunni leader, Shia leader, and then when he went to Egypt and met with the chief Sunni leader. I mean, he reached out to Muslims, Buddhists, everyone, and embraced them and said, let's all work for peace, for justice.
Much more on all of his travels and that diplomacy we saw with Pope Francis still to come in this hour. Thank you both so much. Ambassador Joe Donnelly, Father Thomas Reese, really appreciate the conversation.